Welcome back, everyone, to another exciting episode here at Discover Top 5, the place where we dive deep into the world's most fascinating, shocking, and mind-blowing facts, all packed into 5 thrilling moments that you won't want to miss. Whether it's the world's most mysterious places, the craziest historical events, or the latest global trends, we've got you covered with the top 5 things you need to know, see, and explore. So grab your seat, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and let's get started. Today, we're diving into a topic that's sure to get you thinking. The world is constantly changing, and some countries are facing challenges that could change the course of history. From economic crises to political instability and even the possibility of collapse, we're going to explore the top 5 countries that could face an uncertain future in the years to come. Stay tuned, because this list is full of surprising revelations that you won't want to miss.
What happens when a country is caught in a war it can't afford, while its economy crumbles beneath it? Ukraine is currently living this nightmare. Since Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022, the country has been locked in a brutal conflict that has drained its economy, displaced millions, and left its future hanging by a thread. Although international aid has kept Ukraine afloat, the cracks in the foundation are becoming impossible to ignore. The Ukrainian economy shrank dramatically, with its GDP plunging by almost 30% in 2022 alone. Cities have been reduced to rubble, industries have collapsed, and inflation has soared. The country's infrastructure is severely damaged, making it harder to rebuild. Despite receiving billions in military and financial aid from the West, there is growing concern about how long that support will last, especially as political shifts in the US and Europe threaten to cut off funding. Internally, Ukraine is dealing with growing divisions. While most Ukrainians remain united in their resistance against Russia, the prolonged war has led to rising frustration. Corruption, an issue that Ukraine has battled for years, is creeping into the public discourse once again. Many are questioning how aid money is being spent. If international support dwindles and economic recovery remains stagnant, Ukraine could face not only an economic collapse but also a collapse in governance. And the elephant in the room: what happens if Ukraine loses more territory to Russia? A total fragmentation of the country could occur, with occupied regions either absorbed by Russia or left in limbo, unrecognized and unstable. Even if Ukraine manages to hold its borders, rebuilding the nation will take decades. Ukraine's future remains uncertain, and it's facing a battle on multiple fronts. Will it survive and rebuild? Or is it already too far gone? If Ukraine is on the edge, what does that mean for its tiny neighbor, Moldova? This small nation, sandwiched between Ukraine and Romania, is one of the poorest in Europe. Moldova's economy is fragile at best, heavily dependent on foreign aid and remittances from Moldovans working abroad. Inflation has skyrocketed, energy prices have spiked, and the cost of living is becoming unbearable for many Moldovans. Caught between the powerful forces, the European Union and Russia, Moldova has leaned westward, aspiring to join the EU and distance itself from Russian influence. But that move has made Moldova a target. Russia has already cut off gas supplies, applying economic pressure on Moldova's pro-European government. At the same time, pro-Russian factions inside the country are stirring unrest, pushing for closer ties with Moscow. The situation is further complicated by the presence of Transnistria, a breakaway region backed by Russia, which could become another flashpoint in the region. If tensions continue to escalate, Moldova could find itself at the center of a geopolitical storm, with little ability to defend itself. Moldova's future is precarious. Will it collapse under the weight of external pressure and internal instability? Or will it somehow navigate this dangerous landscape? Can a country survive when its own leaders are actively pushing for its division? Bosnia and Herzegovina is facing one of Europe's most dangerous political crises. The country has never been fully stable after the Bosnian War of 1992 to 1995, which ended with the Dayton Agreement, creating a complex government structure. Bosnia is split into 2 entities: the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is primarily Bosniaks and Croats, and the Republika Srpska, predominantly Serbs. For years, this arrangement kept the peace, but today, it's barely holding together. The biggest threat comes from Milorad Dodik, the leader of Republika Srpska, who has openly called for secession. He wants the Serbian-controlled region to either become independent or join neighboring Serbia. This isn't just political talk. Dodik has already started pulling Republika Srpska away from Bosnia's central government, refusing to recognize its authority. If this move towards secession gains momentum, Bosnia could spiral into another major conflict. Economically, Bosnia is struggling. Unemployment is high, corruption is rampant, and thousands of citizens are leaving every year in search of better opportunities. The country's brain drain is weakening its already fragile economy. Tensions are also growing between Bosnia and the West. The EU has tried to keep the country stable, but with Russia backing Republika Srpska's separatist movement, the situation is becoming more volatile. If Bosnia collapses, it could trigger another Balkan conflict, pulling neighboring countries into the chaos. So, can Bosnia and Herzegovina hold itself together? Or is it only a matter of time before it falls apart completely? What happens when a country's leader clings to power while its people grow desperate for change? Belarus, often called Europe's last dictatorship, is teetering on the edge. For decades, President Alexander Lukashenko has ruled with an iron fist, suppressing opposition, rigging elections, and silencing dissent. But in recent years, cracks in his regime have started to show. The massive protests of 2020, sparked by an election widely seen as fraudulent, shook the country. Though Lukashenko brutally suppressed them, the anger has never disappeared. It's simmering beneath the surface. Belarus is heavily dependent on Russia for financial aid, security, and military support. But this dependence is dangerous. If Russia weakens, Belarus could collapse along with it. The economy is suffering, crippled by Western sanctions that have decimated its industries. More and more Belarusians are looking to escape the country, and Lukashenko's grip on power is weakening.
If Belarus faces an internal revolt or external pressure, the country could descend into chaos overnight. Is Belarus on the brink of collapse, or will it remain a dictatorship under Russian control? Can a country ever truly escape financial disaster, or is Greece heading toward another economic meltdown? After years of painful austerity measures and international bailouts, many believed Greece had turned the page on its debt crisis. But the same problems that triggered its infamous crisis still lurk beneath the surface, and the warning signs of another collapse are growing stronger. Greece's national debt remains one of the highest in Europe at over 160% of GDP. While the country has avoided default so far, it's still walking a tightrope, heavily reliant on tourism and external investments. If the global economy slows or another crisis hits, Greece could find itself drowning in debt once again. Inflation and rising living costs are squeezing Greek households, and unemployment, though lower than during the worst years of the crisis, remains one of the highest in the EU. Many young Greeks are leaving the country in search of better opportunities, leading to a dangerous brain drain. Politically, Greece is in turmoil. Widespread corruption, government inefficiencies, and tax evasion remain massive problems. While Greece has made strides toward economic reform, deep-seated issues continue to hold it back. If another financial downturn hits, Greece could face political instability, protests, and even social unrest. Can Greece stabilize its economy long-term, or will it end up right back where it started, on the brink of another financial collapse? Can one of Europe's biggest economies survive when it's buried under trillions of dollars in debt? Italy, the third largest economy in the Eurozone, carries one of the heaviest debt burdens in the world, over 140% of its GDP. For years, the country has been walking a financial tightrope, but the cracks in the system are becoming more visible. Italy's banking sector is one of its biggest weaknesses. Italian banks hold massive amounts of bad loans, making them vulnerable to economic downturns. If another financial crisis hits, Italy's banking system could collapse under the weight of its bad loans, triggering a ripple effect across Europe. Italy also has an aging population with one of the lowest birth rates in the world. This demographic imbalance is putting extreme pressure on public finances as more elderly citizens rely on pensions and health care while fewer young workers sustain the economy. Politically, Italy is deeply unstable. The country has seen over 70 governments since World War II, and each new administration struggles to implement reforms. Populist parties are gaining ground, and the risk of economic mismanagement is growing.
Italy, one of Europe's largest economies, is grappling with massive debt, a weak banking system, and political instability that could push the country to the brink of collapse. Italy's debt is a staggering 140% of its GDP, making it one of the most indebted nations in the world. For years, the country has been walking a financial tightrope, relying on the European Union for financial aid and support, but cracks are starting to appear. One of Italy's biggest vulnerabilities is its unstable banking sector. Italian banks are notorious for holding large amounts of bad loans, which makes them particularly vulnerable to economic downturns. If another financial crisis strikes, the banking system could collapse, sending shockwaves throughout the entire European Union. Adding to Italy's woes is its aging population. With one of the lowest birth rates in the world, Italy has a shrinking workforce, and more elderly citizens are relying on pensions and healthcare. This demographic imbalance is putting a huge strain on public finances, making it harder for the government to manage its growing debt. Political instability is another concern. Italy has seen over 70 governments since World War II, making it one of the most politically unstable countries in Europe. This constant turnover has hindered any real progress on reforms, as each new administration struggles to pass meaningful economic measures. The rise of populist movements is further complicating the situation, and Italy's relationship with the EU has become increasingly strained. If Italy defaults on its debt or decides to leave the Eurozone, it wouldn't just be an Italian crisis, it could destabilize the entire EU. Experts warn that if Italy's economy crashes, it could trigger a financial catastrophe worse than the Greek debt crisis, and it could mark the beginning of the unraveling of the European Union. Hungary's path is becoming increasingly isolated, and it could lead to both political and economic collapse. Over the past decade, Prime Minister Viktor Orban has distanced Hungary from the European Union, choosing to chart a path that often defies the values and policies of the EU. Orban's government has faced multiple clashes with Brussels, particularly over issues like democratic backsliding, media censorship, and judicial independence. As a result, Hungary's relationship with the EU has soured, and Brussels has frozen billions of euros in funding. With its economy already struggling, this has placed immense pressure on Hungary, exacerbating inflation and weakening its currency. The forint. The country now has one of the weakest currencies in the region, which makes it harder for businesses and citizens to afford imported goods. Hungary's close ties to Russia and China further complicate its position. Despite Europe's efforts to isolate Russia due to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, Hungary has chosen to maintain close relations with Moscow and Beijing. This stance has further alienated Hungary from both NATO and the EU, raising fears that Hungary could eventually be the first European country to exit the EU entirely. Such a move could devastate the Hungarian economy and leave it vulnerable to external forces. Protests against Orban's government are on the rise, and the opposition is gaining ground. Meanwhile, Hungary's youth are leaving the country in droves in search of better opportunities in Western Europe. If Orban continues on his current path, Hungary could very well be heading toward collapse, both politically and economically. Spain is facing a unique set of challenges, from regional separatism to an economic crisis that could cause its collapse. The Catalonia independence movement is one of the biggest threats to Spain's unity. Catalonia, one of Spain's wealthiest regions, has been at odds with the central government for years. The 2017 independence referendum, which saw more than 90% of voters supporting secession, sparked violent clashes with Spanish police and left deep scars in the relationship between Catalonia and Madrid. But Catalonia is not the only region seeking independence. The Basque country has long had its own nationalist movement, and the central government is struggling to contain the growing unrest from both sides. If Catalonia, the Basque country, were to successfully break away, Spain would face the collapse of its political and territorial integrity. Spain's economic situation is equally dire. The country has high unemployment, especially among the youth, and an unstable housing market. Spain relies heavily on tourism, but a global economic downturn or any crisis affecting travel could plunge the country into economic disaster. Inflation and rising costs of living are further squeezing Spanish households, and protests over labor laws, pension reforms, and living costs have become common. With the government walking a tightrope between regional demands, economic recovery, and growing public discontent, Spain is heading toward a potential political and economic collapse. The question is, can Spain hold itself together, or will it soon face fragmentation, both politically and economically?
France is no stranger to social unrest, but the country is now facing a crisis that could push it to the brink. The protests, riots, and political instability of recent years are only growing in intensity, and many fear the country is heading toward collapse. One of the biggest issues is the increasing divide between the government and the people. The Yellow Vest protests and nationwide strikes over pension reforms have made it clear that many French citizens are fed up with the government's policies, which they perceive as favoring the elite at the expense of the working class. Economic inequality is a key driver of this unrest. As inflation rises and the cost of living increases, the social tensions in France are reaching a boiling point. The government's inability to address these issues has led to widespread frustration, and the divide between the French elite and the working class continues to widen. Another issue facing France is the rise in immigration and the challenges of integration. France has one of the largest immigrant populations in Europe, and while diversity has enriched the country, it has also led to cultural and political clashes. Violent riots in cities like Paris and Marseille have raised concerns about law and order, and many are questioning whether the government has lost control over certain parts of the country. On top of this, President Emmanuel Macron's approval ratings have plummeted, and extremist political parties on both the left and right are gaining traction. If the government fails to restore stability and address the root causes of social unrest, France could collapse under the weight of its internal conflicts. Will France manage to hold together, or will it succumb to the pressures of its divided society? The United Kingdom, once a global powerhouse, is now struggling to regain its footing after the seismic decision to leave the European Union Brexit. The economic consequences of Brexit have been far-reaching. Losing access to the EU's single market has left businesses across the UK grappling with supply chain disruptions, labor shortages, and increased costs. The British pound has weakened significantly, and inflation is at its highest in decades, making everyday life more expensive for the average citizen. The UK's political instability is also a cause for concern. The country is dealing with an ongoing cost of living crisis, and there's growing discontent with the government's handling of the economy. Meanwhile, Scotland and Northern Ireland are reconsidering their place within the UK. Calls for a second Scottish independence referendum are growing louder, and tensions in Northern Ireland have led some to question whether reunification with the Republic of Ireland is inevitable. If Scotland or Northern Ireland were to break away from the UK, it would have catastrophic consequences for the country's political and economic stability.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Discover Top 5. We hope you found today's exploration as fascinating as we did. The world is full of incredible stories, and we're just getting started. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Which country do you think is at the highest risk of collapse? Or is there another nation you think should be on this list? We love hearing from you, and we always want to know your take on the topics we cover. If you're new to Discover Top 5, welcome to the family. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We bring you the top 5 most exciting and thought-provoking topics, week after week, and we've got plenty more content on the way. If you want to stay ahead of the curve and be the first to know about the latest trends, facts, and jaw-dropping stories from around the world, you've come to the right place. Thank you for spending some time with us today. Your support means the world to us, and we're excited to bring you more incredible insights soon. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and as always, keep discovering. We'll see you in the next video.